Okay, great. So welcome everyone to the 2024-2025 Field Placement Practicum info session. My name's Jillian. I'm the undergraduate administrator in criminology. I'm joined by Danette, our lovely field placement coordinator. So we're going to split this info session up into two sections. First, Danette will discuss some of the details surrounding the different steps to the process of the field placement, and then I'll jump back in to discuss how the placement impacts your registration, in audit, and then again, we'll stop recording after that, and we'll have questions. So I'm gonna mute myself.
All right.
Danette, over to you.
All right, excellent. So as Jillian mentioned, I'm the field placement coordinator, and I've been doing this. I'm into my 17th year now. Prior to that, I spent 25 years working in the field with young offenders. So I've lots of community experience. I've also supervised a lot of Carleton students, and I think we have one of the best criminology field placement programs in the country. So you must submit an application to be considered for the placement. Typically, we would get about 150 to 200 applications. And I usually accept 80 to 90 students. And I say 80 to 90. Typically, it's been 80 students over the year. But what I do, I keep 10 people on the wait list, and quite often I've taken students off of the wait list. So if you do end up on the wait list, then don't panic, because most often as I start the placement process in May, I'm quite often placing students into August, just because students change their minds on things, and so I try to get at least 80 students in the course. That is the link for applications to be submitted, and you have until May 1st to submit those applications. Okay, next slide. So starting this year, the acceptance is based on your major CGPA. In the past, we did it differently. It'll be split between GPA and randomization. So last year, or this past year, was the first year that we accepted students. Half of the students were accepted based on their GPA, and half of them were done through a lottery type of system. So we're going to try it again this year and see how it goes. But those are the letter grades, what they equate to, and what the CGPA points are. The field placement course, so it's a full year course. It's composed of two parts. So the seminar class and the agency work. You must receive a passing grade in both parts of that to pass the course. 50% of your mark is based on the work that you do in the field, and 50% is based on the seminar. So what the seminar class consists of, it's meant to be the academic portion of your field placement. The work that you do in the field is actually like, even though it's unpaid, it's actually like going to a job, and the work that you're doing is considered at that level. So the expectations are that you're going in with a certain skill set. They're there to provide you with that experience, but you're also bringing something to the placement as well. So it's from September until April, the class. I don't want it to make it onerous on the students, so that's why I divide the students into two groups where you can come to class every second week. It's on the same topic for 2 weeks, but you're divided into two groups. Some of the lectures are done with both groups together. So, for example, a class on resume writing and cover letter writing. Both of the groups are there together. The same with when I do an ethics class at the beginning, I have both groups together. So there will be weeks where you'll have back-to-back classes. How the academic evaluation goes is that it's, as I said, 50% of your grade. 2 assignments in each term, so a total of 4 assignments, and it's all related to the placement experience. Typically, I would have one assignment marked at 6%, the other one at 12%, and then you have attendance and participation, which is worth 7%. So each class that you attend, you would get 1 mark for, and then I would have 2% for participation. So what the agency work consists of, so it's not a paid placement, so it's unpaid work. It's not like a co-op course. Students, you would receive academic credit for it, so you're graded on the work that you do. Some field placement programs at other universities have a pass-fail system. I feel that having it graded and be part of your CGPA is so important because the work that you do in the field is significant and you should receive credit for it. 1.0 credit is 8 hours a week at your placement, but there's also some organizations where they like you to work 16 hours a week. So that's where we provide you with an extra credit. The coursework is still the same, but you're doing 8 hours a week more in placement. The class time is unchanged, as I said, and we refer to this as a double credit or 2 credit placement. So the agency work, the hours are range with your placement agency. So when I start placing students by the end of May, beginning of June, sending you off to an interview, and then you get your placement secured. At that time, you should know what your other courses are and what your schedule is going to be. And so that's when you can kind of negotiate that with your placement as to what hours you're going to work. There may be specific requirements for certain positions. For example, with the John Howard Society, they require you, even though you have 2 breaks during the year, reading weeks, they require you to work for one of those reading weeks. And if there's 2 students at one placement, then you'll have to work out the hours with the other student. But I help you to navigate that and help you to work those things out. Most of the placement hours are during the day, but if you're working with a youth serving organization where the hours are after school for the kids, then you're going to have to work your schedule around what those hours are. The Distress Center also has overnight shifts, so they require you to work a couple of overnight shifts throughout your placement, and possibly some evening work. Positions, we have them divided up, frontline work or research work. Some of them may have a mixture of both. I'll give you an example. The Victimology Research Center at Algonquin College is one of those placements where it's specifically research that you'll be doing. Other ones, law offices, although they're frontline, it's frontline work, you will be required to do legal research within those. So maybe we can go on to the next slide and I'll tell you a bit about those, the process. And so how the process go, the applications are due May 1st. Early May, the applications are reviewed, and then early to mid-May, we start sending, Jillian will send out the results of the applications. You'll get an email whether you've been accepted, an email if you're not accepted, and an email if you're on the wait list. If you're not accepted, don't see it as the end of the world that you didn't get into the field placement course. Please reach out to me. We can talk about careers, what you should be doing if you're looking at getting into the field. And I'm quite happy to talk to you a bit about that. So if you're accepted, you receive the email that you're accepted. You need to confirm your acceptance. Sometimes students forget that they applied for the field placement and circumstances may change and they may decide, oh, no, I don't want to do the placement this year. You need to confirm that so that if you're not going to do it, we need to take students off the wait list and offer them the placement. We have a Bright Space group that is set up with everything where you're going to upload your resumes into it. I will be sending you out all of the long list of organizations along with the descriptions. And then we'll ask you to select your preferences. So your top 4 choices. I'll ask you did you pick the top two, and also what your career aspirations are. All of that helps me to decide where I'm going to place you. And I try to get you into the most appropriate placement, or the placement that really matches up with what you want to do as a career, and where you're going to have the most success in. I usually end up with about 10 students that don't get any of their top choices. And so we have a long list of organizations. And so if you don't get one of your top 4 choices, again, it's not the end of the world. I will look at it and say, okay, I'll make recommendations for you. And most often, those recommendations, they work out. You get into a placement that you really, really enjoy. And then I start interviewing you with where I'm going to send you for your placement interview. And I have to kind of sometimes that takes a bit of time. So you need to get back to me as quickly as possible. So you need to be checking your emails on a regular basis around that time. The issue is if you're not checking your emails, then you may miss out on an opportunity. So I also am relying on the placement supervisor when I say, okay, I'm sending you a student for an interview. Then you need to be able to communicate with the placement supervisor to set up those interviews. So those need to be done in a timely fashion. I provide you with a lot of information at the start. You need to make sure that your resume is done well, that it's, doesn't have a lot of spelling mistakes. I would highly suggest that you go to Career Services. They'll help you to put together a really good resume. And they'll also help you with interview preparation. I can give you the basics of what you need to know going into an interview, whether the interview is in person or through Zoom. And you would be surprised if you're comfortable with Zoom, then things might go well. But if you're not comfortable with Zoom, things have not gone well with students doing Zoom interviews. So I walk you through that process every step of the way, even what to wear when you're going into the interview. So you need to have a successful interview in order for the placement to be confirmed with that organization. There's some placements where they rely on my judgment in terms of accepting a student. So you may be one of the lucky ones where you don't have to go through an interview. But for the most part, most of the places rely on interviews. And I will send 2 or 3 students to an organization. If that's your top choice for organizations, and there's 3 of you that have chosen that as their top choice, then I will send all 3 of you for an interview. And it may be for 1 position or 2 positions. So you have to put your best foot forward for that. Okay. The interview as well, I try to get them, most of the students placed in by the end of June. It doesn't always work that way. We start running into to summer vacations, either yours or the agency supervisors. So right from the start of this whole process, communication is so important. You need to let me know when you're going to be on vacation. I'll try to get those interviews set up ASAP. If we run into vacation, then it may be delayed into July, and then sometimes even until August. So timing is key to be able to get back to me as quickly as possible. Keep checking your emails. There's a number of organizations that require a police records check to be done, some for the vulnerable sector. Those can delay the process as well. So I will provide information on that you need to get this done right away. And please listen to me when I say that, because we've had students that didn't get it done until September. And I had a student that didn't start placement this year until the beginning of December, because his security clearance didn't come through until then. So, all right. You're also entering into a contract with the organization, so it's a two-way partnership where you're there as a student to learn, but they're also expecting some good work from you. So you set up an agency student contract. That's going to set up your goals and objectives, and that's to be set up with the placement supervisor the first week that you start placement. It's also what you're going to be evaluated on as well. And both of you sign that. Those forms, there's also insurance forms. You're covered by Carleton's insurance. And those forms, I will be on top of you to make sure that those forms get into me by the time you start placement in September. The agency student contract, as I said, is done in your first week of placement. And both you and the placement supervisor should retain a copy of that. The evaluations, as I mentioned before, it's 50% of your final grade that the placement supervisor is going to evaluate you on your job performance and how well you do that. I will tell you one thing, that reliability and dependability are two of the key factors in success in your placement. If you have too many things going on in your life and you're not attending your placement, or you keep changing the days that you're going in, or you're sick half of the time, then you're not going to succeed in this placement, because it is like going to a job. So we'll have one evaluation that's done in December, and then your final evaluation will be done in April. The evaluations are based on, as I mentioned, your goals and objectives that you set out, and also your professional conduct. And remember that you're representing Carleton University and the criminology program, so it's so important to put your best foot forward. If the organization has had a student that did not do well the year before, they may be expecting the same thing to happen from you. So you've got to make sure, or they may be hard on you in terms of what they expect. So it's so important that you do put your best foot forward. And at the very least, you want to get a great reference out of it. Conducting yourself professionally, making sure that you dress appropriately for the organization, and if they hire you, that is the best outcome. And so many students get hired through the placement, but you will only get offered those spots if you put your best foot forward. Okay, so I'm turning it over to Jillian to go through all the nitty-gritty of your audit.
Okay, so we're going to go through the registration and your audit. So more of how this impacts your program requirements and academics on that side of things. So as we've talked about, CRCJ 3901 is a full year 1 credit course. So you'll be registering in both the fall and winter terms, like any other full year course you might have taken in the past. We give students access to registration once they've been accepted, and we know they have a placement secured. So that's something we'll be doing on our end to make sure you're able to register once you are potentially in the placement. So to earn the 1 credit, students complete the seminar class and 192 hours of work at their agency from September to April. And CRCJ 3902 is also a full year 1 credit course. The CRCJ 3902 is the additional credit you do if you are doing a double placement. So together, the 3901 and the 3902 make up 2 credits and require 384 hours of work. It's so important that you check your audit before going into the placement process. You want to make sure that you have room for CRCJ 3901, and if you're doing the double placement, CRCJ 3902. So where you're looking on your audit for where these would sit is for 3901 specifically, I put two titles here because if you're from one of the older, what we call catalog years, the requirement has slightly different wording. Most of you will probably have the second wording, but they're the same requirement. So it's either 1 credit in CRCJ 3901 or approved CCJ electives at the 3000 level. That's if you're from one of our older catalog years. But again, most of you will have the wording 1.5 credit in CRCJ or approved CCJ electives at the 3000 level or higher. That's where CRCJ 3901 will count. If you already have courses there, they will get bumped to another spot on your audit, and you need to make sure that you have room for somewhere. You need to have somewhere else for them to go, room somewhere else. So it's not just how these courses will sit, it's how they impact other courses you've potentially already taken. So when we're looking at where CRCJ 3902 will sit on your audit, it's going to sit under the section credits not included in the major CGPA, which is your elective requirements, as a CCJ related free elective. So it's under your free elective section because it's a CRCJ course. So you want to make sure that it has space there and you're not going to exceed the maximum number of CCJ related electives allowed. If you're in the 20 credit program, there's 15 credits allowed that are CRCJ or CCJ, basically crim related. If you're in the 15 credit program, that's about 10.5. You don't want to be exceeding those maximums, whether you're participating in the field placement or not. So whether you're now looking to see how field placement will fit, whether you're just looking at your audit overall, if in doubt, consult the Institute for Advising, and we can walk through you where that is and how to see that on your audit. Okay, so this is a sample audit here of what the requirement actually looks like where 3901 will sit. So like I said, it's the 1.5 credit in CRCJ or approved CCJ elective at the 3000 level or higher. This is showing as section number 9 on the audit. That's only for that's dependent on the concentration you're in, what number it is, the wording will be the same, but it might not be number 9. I believe this is a law concentration audit. So it might be in a different number, but title will be the same. And you'll see how it sits there with the 1 credit in CRCJ 3901, leaving a 0.5 credit still needed because no other courses have been taken in that specific section. If we're looking at the 3902, like I said, it's the credits not included in the major CGPA, which is your elective requirements, and it falls under the free elective section. So the second section within your audit requirements, those are your free electives, and 3902 sits as an additional 1 credit underneath there. You'll see in this one, this person has 1.5 credits in their free electives. Free electives range from 1.5 to 2.5 credits, depending on your concentration stream. And you'll see that this audit already has another course there, plus the 3902, which means they're fulfilling that requirement. Okay, so we've also put together a little bit of a sample schedule for what year could look like while taking the field placement. This is with a single placement. I built the schedule around the law concentration. So where it says like laws 2XX, laws 3XX, you can sort of input your own concentration requirements towards that. If you're selecting a concentration, as you may know, we're switching things up a bit. There's some modifications coming, and students may not have to have a concentration anymore if they choose not to. And this is also for a full course schedule. So for 5 courses per term. Obviously, if you choose to reduce your course load, it won't look exactly like this, but it's basically to show how the field placement 3901 can be taken alongside your other requirements, core requirements, concentration requirements, and other electives that you need to take. This is another sample schedule for the double placement. This one's built around a sociology concentration, again, where it sort of specifies Soci 3XXX or one of our research methods courses that you might not need to take. You can adjust that to your own requirements. And again, it's a full course load, but it's again to show how 3901, 3902 can be built into your schedule, and also how they take up both fall and winter term credit requirements. So if you're in the single placement, that's a 0.5 credit per term, 1 credit total. If you're in a double placement, that's 1 credit per term, 2 credits total for the academic year, fall, winter. Okay, so I'll go a little more into the prerequisite requirements. As Danette mentioned, these have changed a little bit going into this year and going forward, because with the modifications to our program, 2000 level requirements that used to be core major requirements to all concentrations now won't apply to every concentration, specifically the stream where students select no concentration. So in order to adjust our field placement process to these new modifications, we've adjusted those requirements. So while we've previously required students to have completed the core major 1000 and 2000 level courses in order to be eligible for the field placement, and we'd create a GPA based off that, this will no longer be the case. As for the grade portion of selection for the placement, we'll be using major CGPAs. The only exception you'll see to this sort of prerequisite requirement is that certain types of placements may require certain course backgrounds. So for example, placements with law offices, students will need to have completed Laws 2301 and Laws 2302. So that's why if you do have already done the application process, or when you go to fill out your application, you'll see that we still ask students to just identify which courses they've already done of those kind of core 1000, 2000 level courses. We no longer ask for a grade. That's because it will hopefully streamline the process later on when Danette's going to place students, if we already kind of have an idea of what courses students have already completed. Okay, so since we are now doing the acceptance based off the major CGPA, I thought I'd identify where you can find that on your audit. We did already have that where students put it in the application, but we mainly use the field placement GPA for the purposes of the acceptance process. Now it's this major CGPA. So when you're looking at your audit, when you're scrolling through, you have two CGPAs. The first one you'll see next to the summary of your program requirements is your overall CGPA. That's for all 20 or 15 credits. What you want to use is your major CPA. So it's the second one on your audit as you're scrolling down, and it'll be on the top line next to the summary of your major requirements. So when I say the top line, I mean this, where I've highlighted this 11 CGPA, the one below that, the 6.5 or 4.0 if you're in the 15 credit program. That's the CGPA required for the purposes of graduation. The one above is your CGPA. Obviously, you want to be as accurate as possible when filling out that application. However, we review all applications, go through everything, make sure all the information is correct. The information we have anyway can access through your academic details. So if you accidentally put in the wrong CGPA, or if it updates once final grades come in for winter, don't worry about it. We're going to go through it. We're going to make sure everything's correct before we start reviewing applications. Okay, so I think that actually gets us to the end there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording, and then we can go ahead with any questions anyone has.